Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's Saturday afternoon. Yesterday I posted a couple of videos regarding gearboxes and a bit of a walk through the internals of those, and left when we had just calculated the shim values, and I was about to sit down and work out the shims. Now we've done that, and in the meantime I got rid of that ugly old board that was sitting there, and I built a new shim holder on my new 50-ton press, which is probably a lot bigger than you need in a bike shop like this, but I bought it out of a deceased estate as a thing to replace my 20-year-old leaking 20-ton press. It's great, except it's like a V8. You've got to be very light on the throttle with that one, but we'll soon pick that up. Now, I had some contacts. I always have contacts when I make movies, from people asking things and people wanting to know things, and I try to answer all of those. If I haven't answered them yet, it's because I've been busy pottering around while there's nobody about to get some work like my shim holder done. And that brings me to this. I've calculated the shims using the measuring method that I showed, and then I've selected them from a range of shims here in this box. There's many shims in there, and they are worth a few bob each, but they're all slightly different sizes, and that sometimes helps when you're trying to accurately shim a gearbox. When you do the shims, if you're doing them, take the time to clean them. I use these scouring pads. They look like dishwashing pads, but they're not. They come from either Worth or Forsch. The reds and the grey are from from Worth. They're fine. They come in flat pads in a pack of 10. They're worth every penny if you're cleaning stuff up. The green one is a medium. It comes from Forsch, and it comes in a 10-metre roll. And before you measure a shim, you should clean it completely so that there's no crap on it, so you're getting the correct measurements of the shim, because often you have to use 2 of them to get the right value. So make sure you do that, otherwise you won't get the right answer. And also, if you're taking your gearbox apart, say to put a pawl spring in there and not disturbing the bearings, you won't need any re-shimming, generally speaking. But if you take the bearings off and replace them, everything's got a tolerance, and that tolerance varies from manufacturer to manufacturer. It will always be within a specification, but it will be different, and it will make a difference when you're measuring things in thousandths of an inch or the equivalent metric value. So they have to be re-shimmed. This little plate that I made is just right in hand's depth from the gearbox, and that's where I put the shims that I take out of each gearbox I open up, and then I measure them in comparison with the numbers that I want to put back after I've rebuilt the gearbox, to see if there's any glaring differences, and if there is, I investigate to see and make sure I haven't missed something. And speaking of missing something, one of the conversations I had was about the big bearing on the output shaft in this gearbox. The circlip wasn't fitted correctly, and that's true. I saw it when I was making the video, but that was fitted by someone else, and that person didn't know that those big bearings that I buy are external alternator bearings, and they are meant to operate outside in an air environment for anything up to 3,000 hours, and they have such a tight radius in the bearing that it's almost impossible in some cases, depending on where the circlip groove has been put, to fit a packing wire in there. And that one was one of them. The guy that put the bearing on had pointed it out to me, and I told him I'd have a look at it. And in the course of making these videos yesterday, it took me 5 hours to make those 2 videos, not for double takes and extras, but because I do these videos on my own, and I am a one-man band. I even have to hold the camera myself, make up the script, which is made up as I go along, which is why I bumble so much. And I didn't have the box all prepared, but I decided to make the video just on the very spur of the moment, and when I had the shafts there sitting on the bench, I picked them up to show. That circlip was corrected before the box was assembled, and I warrant everything I do out of this shop for 12 months. Not 12 months and so many kilometres, 12 months. And the reason I do it for 12 months is that I take great care to make sure the customer's getting what he's paid for. That doesn't mean it turns out perfect every time. It doesn't mean we don't have the occasional problem. I just got a message a minute ago from a guy that I rebuilt a lovely bike for, completely rebuilt, Sieben rock kits, everything else, and there's a bolt missing out of a rocker cover. the centre bolt out of a rocker cover. So we'll just replace it. It's not a big deal. That's what we give people warranties for when we charge them anything from $5,000 to $7,000, $8,000, $9,000 to rebuild an engine, depending on what they want done. It's an expensive exercise to build BMWs, and people are entitled, in my view, to have all the care that can be taken to do a job properly. Now, what are we going to do next? Well, we're going to put these shims with a couple of dabs of grease onto the shaft that they are numbered for. We're going to take this plate off. We're going to put some Loctite master gasket on the back of these boxes. I never used to do that for a long time, and I will never, while my backside points to Mother Earth, put silicon in there. But with the old boxes and the lives they've led, people have stuck screwdrivers in there, they've prized them apart. Like I said about this one here, they've had a fairly difficult existence. I've cleaned that up as best I can. I don't know whether I did it before or not, but I'll show you. That little V there is the vent that you have to fill if you have a paralever, to stop the double bellows from pumping the oil out of the gearbox. Just put a swipe of, dare I say it, silicon in there, because you need something with some body in it, but a swipe only. Once we put the shims in place on here, we will then heat this backing plate up evenly until it's warm enough all over to make spit sizzle. We'll pick it up carefully with some appropriate tools. We'll place it very carefully over the dowels and the gearbox, lining it all up, drop it on, shake it or wriggle it a little bit, trying not to disturb the shims, and then tap it down with a soft face dead blow mallet gently. What do I heat it with? I use this MAP gas, Burns-O-Matic, comes out of the States I think. Great stuff. Got to be a bit careful with the torch. It's got a very hot point, so you want to play the torch around a lot if you're using one of these and spread the heat. You don't want to actually pinpoint it until you get spit to sizzle on the case. If you spin on it, it sizzles and burns off straight away. It's around 100 degrees and it's time to go. I also have a much bigger LPG system for bigger jobs. Obviously stand back and heat the case completely, or if it's a really important thing like fitting a sleeve in a block, I'll take it down to a local Perspex manufacturer and use their infrared oven to heat it up to about 110, 120 degrees. So there you have it. I'm going to pause this now just briefly, and I will come back in a second when I've got this all set up and the back on. Why I use Loctite master gasket 518, I put it on the alloy on both sides and put it down on the gasket, squash it out, clean it up. It doesn't clog, it won't block, it won't bubble, it will just seal any imperfection in the back of these old boxes. And I've only probably in a year and a half had 2 come back with leaks out of the cases, but that was enough to convince me that even a straight edge won't fix something that you can't see with your own eye. I'll be back shortly, just hang on. So here we are back. Since I left you, it's about an hour and 3/4 ago. I've taken the shim plate off and got everything ready, put the shims in place and put the gearbox back cover on, torqued it down. That little green mark there just tells me that I've completed the torquing and checking sequence in the way that I do it. It just lets anybody know that wants to know that that's what it's for. So we've got it all set up. This is the input shaft I'm turning here. There's no feelable end float in there, and it's as loose as a goose, which is lovely. It's got a tiny amount. If I put the depth micrometer on there, I'd say it will probably have 2 or maybe 3 thou end float in it. This you check a little differently. I tried to explain this the other day with a fixed camera and it didn't work. So in here you've got this shim. See how that just moves around very slightly there? And I'm trying to hold it and do it at the same time, but see that? The red stuff you can see is just grease. I put the grease on the shims and the bearings where they have to go to hold them while I put the back on. Heat the back till split sizzles. It takes a bit of lining up. There's a dowel in the case here and another one here, there, and you've got to get it all right and not knock the shims off and tap it down. Again, you know, you don't need, if you need to flog it, you've done something wrong. So I use one of these, and that's pretty much what you need to do to get the back down. If you've got to belt it, it's wrong. Don't keep going, stop. Now that's it for today. I'm just going to say, I do these videos, I do not do them as workshop videos, ladies and gentlemen. I do not make them as a how to do something. I make them as an adjunct to an operations or workshop manual for people who are considering doing their own maintenance and own work. You have to decide whether you have the skills to do it. You will certainly, for a gearbox or a final drive particularly, need some special tools. It's up to you. What I try to do is demystify what's in there, demystify how they work, show you the basics of how they go together or come apart, and generally help you being an airhead owner who wants to learn. If you're interested in a workshop setup, go and pay somebody to teach you. And if you want to sort of be difficult about it, that's fine too. What I'm doing, I believe, is to try and help forward the knowledge base of airhead owners so they can maintain and look after their bikes into the foreseeable future. Please ride safely and stay well. We'll talk again soon.